Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to discuss the mysterious 2019 Gibson 125th Anniversary Les Paul Supreme. This has quite the interesting tale behind it, but first, let's talk Les Paul Supreme so we know what we're even talking about here. So, a Les Paul Supreme was first birthed as a limited edition for the Summer NAMM show in 2003. And they've been in production off and on ever since then, so it wasn't just a limited one-time type of deal here. But it was introduced as the top-of-the-line Gibson USA model. Now, if you're not familiar with how Gibson does things, there's Gibson USA, which is all their production units, and then there's the Gibson Custom Shop. Gibson doesn't have overseas divisions, that's just the two main ones. Now there are two rankings above the Custom Shop right now, that would be the Crimson division and then the Murphy Labs, but that's not important to understand for this particular video. So what makes the king of the Gibson USA models interesting? Well, first off, on the face of the headstock, they had this new globe inlay, and it had a banner around it that said Supreme. That was super fancy to find on a Les Paul at that point in time. And they had an ebony fretboard with Super 400 inlays and gold frets. Super 400 inlays originated on the Super 400 Jazz Archtop model. They're just block inlays, but they have an alternating pattern of 1 and 2 dashes up and down the neck. But prior to the Supreme's release, there had only been 2 other Les Paul models to feature those. In 1978, the 2550th anniversary, and in 1991, they did a Super 400 Les Paul Custom. You can check out these videos if you want to learn more about those. And gold frets, that sounds awesome in theory, but in practice, they just look like rusty frets. I do not suggest them. But it was a unique feature for those guys, and Gibson has used it on and off since. But perhaps the biggest thing that made a Supreme special is the back. Take a look at this. You get a flamed maple back. And it's not like a The Les Paul or a Super Custom. It's actually a carved back, just like the top, so it's not flat. It has an arch to it, kind of like a violin. But you're going to notice, no back plates. How did they wire this thing up? There's no F-holes for them to fish the stuff through. Well, for Supremes, they chamber them out and they give them these giant output jacks. That way they can wire the guitar through there. So if you're a big fan of modifying guitars, Supremes are not for you because it's not super easy to work on them. They're also not good purchases if you don't know Gibsons, because this is the #1 most faked model of all time. There's so many fake Supremes out there, I truly believe there's more fakes than there are real ones. In the initial 2003 run, there were 4 colors: Heritage Cherry Sunburst, Desert Burst, Root Beer, and Trans Amber, but throughout the years, there's been a whole bunch of different finishes, including solid colors like white and black. Now that we understand the Supreme, are they collectible guitars? Remember, this is USA production stuff. They're not necessarily special. So the answer to that question is yes and no. They mainly appeal to a small group of people, and they generally sell anywhere between $1,800 to $2,800. As far as Les Paul goes, they are not the most expensive, but a lot of people get confused thinking that they're custom shops, and like, why is this so cheap? I get that message all the time. But that's why they're not ridiculously expensive. However, if you do want to add a Supreme to your collection, there are a couple of collectible ones I would suggest. First off, you could buy a first year example 2003, those will hold value pretty well, but there's been some limited edition and anniversary models of these that I would suggest. Like the 2015s, those things were pretty cool, as well as the Supreme Florentines with the pointy cutaway. You could check out this video if you want to learn a little bit more about those. There was also a Guitar of the Week version of one of these in like an autumn burst. It didn't actually have inlays on the fretboard, but since it was a limited edition of 400, it makes them kind of desirable. But the #1 most collectible Les Paul Supreme that will ever be made was done up in 2005 to celebrate the 90th birthday of Les Paul, you know, the guy. It's one of the few Supremes that actually still has a mahogany back, but it had a gold top finish, they only made 90 of them, and they had Les Paul sign it right below the tailpiece. And it had a fancy 90th anniversary inlay at the 12th fret. Those things were $10,000 brand new. Put that into perspective. Not a custom shop guitar. That's like Gibson asking 10 grand for like a classic custom. Those were terrible investments brand new, but that's the reason why those things sell anywhere between about $5,000 to $7,000 yet today, sometimes even a little more. But the second most collectible Supreme is the one that we're going to talk about today, and it was only birthed in 2019. So what is it that makes this thing so special that I can so confidently say that this is the next best thing after Les Paul's 90th birthday version? As the headstock implies, this is the 125th anniversary of Gibson Guitar Company. Orville officially started this company in 1894, so if you do the math, it's the true 125th anniversary for the company. It's technically the 16th anniversary of the Supreme and the 67th of the Les Paul, so none of those really work so nicely. The 16th, 67th? Nope, can't call it that one. Not quite as cool as the 2550. But being born in 2019 makes this thing kind of interesting because you know they had to have been brainstorming this in 2018, and that's when Gibson changed ownership. So this whole idea was birthed under the Henry J era, but it wasn't executed until the new Curly era. But that also slightly explains the mysterious disappearance of this model. It was in 2018 when I started to actually pay attention to brand new guitars, and I remember seeing this on Gibson's website, or it was like an article or something, like late 2018, early 2019. And after that, I never saw any advertising for this ever again. These things never showed up in the major stores. We're talking Sweetwater, Musician's Friend, Guitar Center, Music Zoo, Chicago Music Exchange. Maybe they just had pre-orders and they sold out and they were never officially listed. That's a possibility, but usually they at least have some sort of a product page for them. But I had somebody reach out to me wanting to find one of these, so they asked me if I could hunt one down for them because they could not find a single one for sale or hardly even any mentions of one on the internet. So I told them, hey, I'll see what I can do. And what I was able to uncover is all of these things ended up overseas. You'll find a good amount of them in Japan and Australia and a few within the United Kingdom. But as far as USA listings, I could not find any at that point in time. So I thought that was rather odd and peculiar, but we ended up securing one of these from Japan, which was this one right here. We waited a long time, had to pay import duties and stuff to get it back, but hey, it's here. But in the meantime, I actually found one within the United States. And the fact that I have two of them here is not only really rare, but it kind of helps explain the mysterious disappearance of this guitar. Because Gibson was supposed to make 125 of these things. They actually hand wrote what number it was out of 125 at the back of the headstock. But here's where things get a little bit spooky. These are one of very few Gibson USAs that got certificate of authenticities. But if we open up this one, you'll be able to see it was made on 8/19 of 2019, and we've got this serial number ending in 295. You can see the baby photo right here. Note the white switch tip on this one, and once again, all this stuff matches. And it's number 9 out of 125. But now we switch over to this other one. This one is actually a little bit later. It's a number 26 out of 125. But get this, look at the final completion date of this one, 5/11/2020. And the serial numbers of the guitars are completely the same except for the last 3 digits. So that tells us the necks were made on the same day of the same year, but they're only 3 production numbers apart. So you do the math. I seriously believe they've actually made less than 30 of these. Because when I saw this one show up within the United States, I thought, okay, maybe they were just late on creating these things. But I have yet to see a single other one show up. And I've never seen one later than 26. So did Gibson abandon the 125th anniversary Les Paul Supreme project and only make a few of them? Maybe they couldn't find enough beautiful tops, because that is something that all of these pretty well have in common. Very, very active tops. They might not look the best in photos, but when you get them in person, they move at every single angle. Take a look at number 9 here. I normally don't like these pinstripey tops, but this one, it's got such great movement to it. The back is just killer on this one. But then the other thought is, they're so far out of 2019, they can't really celebrate the anniversary anymore. So maybe that's why they decided to scrap it. But one was made in 2020, midway through the year. So that made me think, okay, maybe they're still actually producing them, but I have yet to see another one show up since that one I found within the States. So that's kind of a mysterious lore about this instrument. It's kind of an unsolved mystery at this point in time. We'll have to wait a couple of years to see if any more surface, but I think this is a lot more rare than we ever thought it would be. And they were supposed to be sold at $4,000 brand new, but I've seen these things selling anywhere between $4,500 up to $7,000, depending on the number and the top and the location. I think these are super future collectibles. But spooky conspiracy theories aside, what makes this guitar special? As we talked about before, we get a fancy 125th anniversary with a banner that tells you 1894 to 2019 instead of the Gibson Supreme globe on the headstock. These guys don't get the gold frets, but we get inlays that I have never seen before on a Gibson. They're diamonds, and they've got a mother-of-pearl exterior with an abalone interior. But at the 12th fret, you see the return of the banner that says 125th on it. Gibson first used that in 1994 for the Centennial Les Pauls, and then in 2014 they used it on pretty much every single guitar in that year. So it kind of lost some of its luster from that, but it is here on this guitar. And other than that, you know, it's just kind of a basic Les Paul Supreme, except for they gave it really nice backs and tops. But you'll notice, this one actually has an amber switch tip, and that's stock from the factory. You can see it in the baby photo, so I guess you can find amber and white stock. But while the fun for the guitar might be over, they also got special cases. Supremes have always gotten fancy cases, but this one's even fancier. You get a 125th anniversary badge screwed to the outside, and then this is really confusing. They put a custom shop badge on it. This is not a custom shop guitar. I don't understand that one. Then the interior, it's just black. It's pretty nice though. Especially since you have like a burgundy-esque color out here. It reminds me of the old Artist series cases in that oxblood finish. Once again, remember, it's really rare that something from Gibson USA comes with a COA booklet, and you get a picture of Orville Gibson in here with that. And your last special feature is a Gibson 125th anniversary strap. That's pretty cool. They really decked these things out and really made them as fancy as they could. It's kind of a strange reason why they're just gone, don't exist anymore though. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned to see if Gibson actually finishes the run or if they've really just given up on these beautiful things. But that's about everything I can tell you about these guys. Let's go ahead and throw one of them on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside a Les Paul Supreme. I've been waiting for this day. I know how they're built, but I've never actually seen inside of ones firsthand. So first off, our pickups within this are just very basic pickups here. You get the 490R, 498T. This is what they used in the customs back in the 90s. It's what they used on many of Les Paul studios. They're not necessarily anything fancy, but they're generally a good basic rock pickup. I personally like them, but there's a lot of people that don't. But at first glance, the pickup cavities don't look too different, right? You still have the regular shelf right there, and you got one right here. And it's got markings just like all other Gibson USA's. LPSU for Les Paul Supreme, 125 for 125th anniversary. But where things start to get a little bit different is at just how deep this cavity goes. Normally it's just a very small shelf so you can get through to the other side, but this one is super gigantic. And you can physically see here where it goes to the toggle switch and how the channel continues down into here. You can actually see the maple back through here and all the glue that they used to join it to the body. But then from here, it just goes down into our control cavity, and then I believe it's also chambered out around here. But remember, this thing does not have back plates. We can't actually take a look inside this thing unless we look in here. So giant output jack. I was surprised to see that they actually don't take that much out of here. It's a rather small square. This is one of those times when I need those endoscopes, but it actually appears to cap off right there, so maybe it has like a center block going on, and then they chamber it on this side that you can't actually see. Or actually, I think you might be able to reach it from here, but you can't actually see where it goes. But yeah, somehow they do it. They wire it up just like that. And that's the reason, if you're a modder, you do not want a Les Paul Supreme, because people are going to charge you a lot more money to work on one of these. I think your best bet would be to get some nice, really flexible wire and just wire it all up outside of the guitar and then just kind of poke them into place and secure them. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Maybe not as hard as like the F-hole fishing, but still, that's a lot more difficult than a regular Les Paul. As far as the rest of the parts here, it's just basic Gibson USA hardware. You can see this one says API for Advanced Plating Incorporated. It's lightweight, and it's got the Allen key adjustment styles, so you don't actually even have to use the thumb wheels. And it has the lightweight aluminum gold tailpiece, also made by the same company. Notice that these do not have poker chips though. That kind of gives it a very modern-esque look. You get the two-piece crazily quilted top in this particular case. This one looks great on the workbench. With stock golden speed knobs, and no pick guards are ever even shipped with these things. You don't even get them in the case. But that sits on top of, once again, the chambered mahogany body, and we get the maple back on this. Let's take a really good look at this fretboard. First off, the material is ebony. 2019 marks the return of ebony for Gibson. So the fact that this actually has an ebony board and it's a USA guitar, that's kind of a big deal. And I really don't think I've ever seen these inlays before. You get an abalone diamond, but then there's a mother-of-pearl little V to accent the left side of the diamond. That's really interesting. Then of course the 125th banner on the 12th fret that we talked about before. But look, when these things start getting larger, then you can really see the details. I really like this one because it has a lot of blue to it. I wouldn't say they're my favorite inlays they've ever done, but I wouldn't mind seeing them again on something else. But just your standard Les Paul specs, 22 medium jumbo frets, 12-inch radius, 1.69 nut width, which increases to 2.08 by the 12th, with the first fret neck depth of 0.84, and 0.97 by the 12th. This is a really big 50s rounded neck profile. It's got a good chunkiness to it. The truss rod cover itself appears to be made of brass, and it says Les Paul on it. And here is our multi-bound headstock here with, once again, that banner logo, 125, 1894 through 2019 Gibson. Moving on to the back. Yeah, kind of interesting to see this, that's for sure. But it's actually a thicker Les Paul than normal. I believe most Les Pauls are about 2 inches with the top, but these guys are 2.23 inches. Keep in mind though, that's just the edge, not the peaks. If you were to take that measurement at the highest point on the back and the top, this is probably a good ½ inch thicker than a regular Les Paul. You can really notice it right here at the heel. Normally there's just like a little bit of guitar right here, but this one adds a whole bunch. So I think a Supreme is perfect for somebody who like plays the jazz box guitars and they feel a Les Paul is a little bit too dinky for them. This is perfect for that, because it feels much larger and it's just such a beautiful guitar. But if you look to the sides of the instrument, it still has the mahogany core showing here. So unfortunately, it's not quite as fancy as like the Les Paul. They don't go put inflamed maple veneers on the side, but remember, it's a Gibson USA production level guitar, not quite custom shop. But you get the large strap buttons at the top, as well as on the back. But just take a second to appreciate that back. Nice. And something else that's a feature of Supremes that you might not necessarily see is you've got 3-ply binding on the back. Now you can see Gibson kind of made a uh-oh right there. It kind of becomes more pointed than it should. Oh well, that's one small QC thing that they probably could have caught and fixed. But remember, the top is the 7-ply custom binding. So it's kind of interesting to see the differences between just how many layers of binding actually makes the guitar look significantly different. That's not something you see on a Les Paul every day. And another thing I'm noticing about all of the necks, at least on the two that I've had, they're actually quilted mahogany. I've never seen this before. A neck that has quilty action. Unfortunately, we can't see it here on the workbench, but hopefully I can get a nice B-roll shot of it or something. You definitely see that while you're playing, though. And once again, right here, 9 of 125. Supposed 125. We'll see if the other ones ever show up or not. But just regular Grover tuners here. As far as the pickup readings, your bridge pickup is hot, 13.55, and your neck pickup's a little less, so 7.7. And within the middle, you get about 5. All said and done, this one weighs 8 pounds, 6 ounces, so it's very lightweight. You feel almost nothing in the body, the neck isn't overly heavy either, and it's completely balanced. So I've had a good time with this Supreme so far. Let's go ahead and plug this one in and hear how it sounds. Now that we know all about the 125th anniversary Les Paul Supreme, what are my final thoughts on these things? As my first official Supreme that I've personally owned, I've got to say, I was kind of impressed with this. It's not like a regular Les Paul, it really has like an open airiness to it. I actually only wanted to play like clean jazzy stuff on this. Maybe it's just because, you know, it's got that arched back, so it kind of feels like a big old jazz box anyways, but the tones were just phenomenal for that. But that doesn't mean that this thing can't rock out either, because I had some pretty decent distorted tones. But for me, it was all about the clean tones on this one. And the sustain was just ridiculous on these. I mean, check out this sample. It just kept going on. And that's not even trying to extend it with vibrato or anything. That's just pluck the note and it goes. Is it worth spending as much as you have to get this particular version of a Supreme? Probably not for everyone. This is seriously a collector's guitar, especially since there's a little bit of a lore as to how many of these were actually made. And they've kind of instantly become trophy pieces if you were able to find one before they all magically disappeared. Especially since Gibson used absolutely fantastic wood on these things. But I think it's definitely worth checking one of these out if you can find one, or just a Les Paul Supreme in general. Because now that I know that they play and feel a little bit differently, they're a little bit thicker than a regular Les Paul, now I understand why somebody might want a solid colored Supreme, because they like all the other attributes about it. And usually if somebody catches the Supreme bug, they catch it and they catch it hard and they just buy a whole bunch of them. So I guess it's great that they do make these things in a multitude of colors. So before we say goodbye, let's go ahead and check this guy out under Blacklight. Nothing too much going on here. You can see that the binding glows a slightly brighter color than the rest, but being a brand new guitar, we're not going to see too much here. But the headstock binding's definitely glowing a lot more. You see that quite often on the Gibson USAs. So everything is looking the way I would expect to see on this one, as is the other one right here. Everything exactly the same. Cool. Thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.